Hello, welcome to the Other Worlds podcast. I'm Martin.
I'm Helen.
I'm Dave.
Thank you, if you listened last time, for joining us again. We're here again, and we're going to talk about something specific this time. Last time, we let a 5-minute introduction go on into something.
35 minutes.
Yeah, that was.
Welcome to our lives.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to try and pull this into a tight 30 minutes this time. I suspect
Good luck.
Yeah, I suspect that's going to be a losing mission, but we will see.
You can try.
We have a very specific thing we want to talk about though this time.
Yeah.
And we want to talk about. Well, it's the reason the reason I asked you guys here, and what I alluded to last time was one of the things we'd had planned 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which, for those watching, if you are watching on YouTube, we have some Harry Potter books on the table in front of us, and I'm here. Yes, they can see it. It's okay. Yes, lovely.
My childhood, Martin.
Okay. I wrote an essay on it and submitted it.
As you can tell, I'm not so much of a fan of Harry Potter as the two people joining me, but that doesn't mean that we don't all like each other.
Yeah, you tasteless swine.
No.
Yeah. Should we save this because we are going to get into this, aren't we? Okay. Yeah, we're going to talk about Harry Potter. I think at the moment it's kind of the right time for us. I mean, we are recording this in January, but this will be going out sometime in March or April.
Yeah.
When they will be getting closer to launching the follow-up stage plays.
And they've also got the new movie series coming
Fantastic
out as well.
Beasts.
And Wet Fan, yeah.
Yeah. Based on the short books, which actually I think they're textbooks in the Harry Potter world.
There was one with a blue cover and one, or was it green and red? Green and red.
The red one's the Quidditch one.
The green one is Quidditch.
Right, sorry, yes.
The Fantastic Beasts and Wet Fan is red and it has claw marks on it.
Which is and little annotations from Harry and Ron throughout, which is quite funny actually.
Yes, it was phrased
There's a good bit of world building that she's done.
Yeah, it was it was their textbook essentially that they've graffitied.
Okay, well, as I say, we're going to talk about Harry Potter. I never really got into Harry Potter. I think I read the first one and I dismissed it because I didn't enjoy it. I think I was still heavily into Terry Pratchett at the time, and I was investing. You know, you don't have much money when you're younger, and the money I did have, I was putting into buying Discworld books, and at that point I had like 20 to go. You guys, I suspect though, there is also that age difference between us, and it's not a huge one, but I think those around me, I don't remember people in school reading Harry Potter, but I suspect you guys do.
Yes.
Yeah, especially by the time I got to secondary school. I don't remember people being big fans of it when I was in primary school, but I think the second the movies came out, it kind of
took off,
and everybody who'd either been reading it and not talked about it started talking about it, or everybody started going about, oh, hold on, this is based on a book, I must go find this book. I read the first 3 books in the space of my final year of primary school. I devoured them, and I read them over and over again, and then I read the 4th book when it came out when I was on holiday when I was just turned 12. And I ripped that apart as well, and I read that so many times that I couldn't bring it today because it's literally falling apart.
But that's the sign of a well-loved book.
Indeed.
I know when I first started them, my mum and dad actually bought the first 3 in like a little pack when I was, I don't know how old I was when we actually bought them. I was at the stage where I was still reading things like Enid Blyton that way. If you pick up a book, no matter what order, and read it and understand it. Assuming it was the same case with this, I picked up the 3rd one because it had a picture of a dog on the back. Yeah. Started reading it, went, what the hell is this? Put it aside for a couple of years. Didn't touch them again until the hype kind of started. And people were saying, you have to read these books. So my mum taught me into just trying them again, and by this stage I had realised, books actually come in an order.
That does help. Unless, of course, you're C.S. Lewis and you're writing Narnia in the completely wrong order, so you as a child have to then decipher which way round he's meant you to read them. Can you tell I had to do that? No. But, I mean, I don't know whether it would have been right, whether I'm right in saying this, but for you guys, you guys kind of aged with Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you were the right age when the movies or the books started
Yeah,
to follow that journey through, and you were in first year as he was in first year, and
Yeah,
which
I
wasn't, so I didn't have that connection to.
Yeah, I was in. I think I literally went through my education from year 7 all the way to year 13, so 11 to 18, with Harry. I think my year especially was bang on. I was either always I think actually I was a year older than him, and that was only ever because obviously his birthday's in July, and mine's in October, and I'm just showing just how geeky I am that I know all this. But that's how big a part of my life Harry Potter was and is.
But I mean, what sort of? I think because I missed that, and I feel like at some point, because I didn't have that opportunity to read these, and it's kind of like I remember watching the very first series of Angel I watched was I didn't watch it until I'd come out of university. Until I'd come out of school and I was in college in South Wales, and by that point it was. Or it may have even have been later, but at that point they'd all gotten out of high school in America, and Angel had gone off on his own to the big bad city. A year after I went to college, I came up from South Wales up to here, to Merseyside, and so I got that sense of being in that other place and trying to find who you are, and that whole thing, and that is why I think I have an attachment to that series, and I think. There is an element though of that to the Harry Potter series that you have that attachment.
Yeah.
You can grow with a character, and even those people who've come after that age group
And then
have been able to follow it through as well, should they so want, in that kind of way. We're now 10 years on after the series sort of first launched. Give or take?
I think the first book...
No, 10 years after it finished.
It
last
finished in
book came
2007. Last book
2007.
came out.
Okay, so 9 years.
Yeah, nearly 9 years.
Then closing in on, 15 years?
Since it started on
15,
started?
16...
She began in
she started in...
Was it 91?
No.
Hang on, we've got the book in front of us.
Well,
I'm pretty sure the book started coming out in...
97.
97.
Yeah, late 90s.
Yeah, 97.
And she was writing the first 3 books, and I think they took a bit more time to write than... Because obviously once she got to Goblet of Fire... not Goblet of Fire. Order of Phoenix. She pounded out a book every year. So for those last 3 years, it was Order of the Phoenix, Half-Blood Prince, Deathly Hallows, whoosh. With the movies coming out as well.
Well, do you think they're still relevant to people, or are they still the books that are going to be read by kids going through school now, do you think?
Yeah.
I think they are, because I think they're current enough that it's not... Obviously, when I was a child, just going back, I was just like, I was a big fan of Roald Dahl. That was the other author I read a lot of. And I read his biography about the boy.
Yes.
And it's...
Well, there were a few of those.
Yeah, I think
there was Boy, there was... I completely can't remember, but there was 3 of them, weren't there? And they aged with him, and
And Boy was the one he had for his school. And it's a boarding school story again. But it's very clearly written in a period of time which was way before mine. We're talking, I think, it felt like it was... Obviously, I'm about 10 at the time, so it almost be centuries ago. It's probably in the 30s or 40s. But with Harry Potter, it's still current enough. There's still enough modern technology that it doesn't feel like it's forever. I sometimes forget it's actually set in the 90s.
Well, in fairness, you say modern technology. Actually, there isn't an awful lot in those books that I really came across that I would go...
Well, okay,
you mainly notice it in the early chapters when he's still with the Dursleys, and you mentioned like Dudley's PlayStation's been thrown out the window.
Yeah, and there's cars and drills, and by modern I literally mean stuff that's in the 20th century.
Yeah.
You're not talking then, like Roald Dahl, about a kid pressed up against a sweet shop window, looking in marvel at everything that's going on, or a kid
because television exists,
or a kid running home because he's been caned on the hand.
Yeah.
Well, the father's village had his way.
Hang you by your thumbs.
Either thumbs or ankles, depending on the version.
Depending on the version you're reading, yes. That is the first anecdote we will be going off on. We'll curtail ourselves.
No.
We behave.
No.
That's not a big point.
That's fair enough. So, I mean, it sounds like you're saying as if the series doesn't feel to you guys as if it has aged an awful lot.
No, because I think, in fairness, it's...
In a way, it's kind of timeless because there's so little to ground you in the time. You can still get a sense that it's 90s or it's at least...
You know, it's at least
modern.
it's reasonably modern. It's in the last 20 years, and it's obviously technology's come flying forward since the 90s, obviously, but it ends in 1998. It's not too far. It's about 20 years in a better part of 20 years. But given how much of it is based at the boarding school, I think that's the trick that it is. 'Cause it's not like in other magical worlds where they've got the ever so slightly apart, but it's also really close to the modern real world. Now that I think would have aged it more, but because it's mostly set in a castle in Scotland,
that is also a kind of anti-technology in a way.
Which is anti-technology because it doesn't work.
Would you liken the series then in any way too? Because I mean, the closest analogy, I mean, there are two close analogies I see. One in terms of just sheer fantasy writing, but the other in terms of the sort of parallels of having the normal world, as it were, and then the closed, hidden world is C.S. Lewis, the Narnia Chronicles.
I knew you were going to say Narnia. Yeah, I kind of agree on that, but there are similarities, and I wouldn't be too surprised if the idea of going into through a sort of portal like the wardrobe or the various other ways you can get into Narnia, because
there's quite a few.
There's quite a few which I discovered because I'd only ever read the line "What's in the wardrobe," and then I get told with Prince Caspian, and I watched the movie before I read the book, and it was just kind of appeared through a tube station.
Yeah.
Okay. But I kind of like that idea, and I think she's probably got some influence there, especially on certain metaphysical allegories you can make between Harry and Aslan. But it's a little less belaboured or beleaguered in Harry Potter, thankfully.
Well, I mean, what we're getting to here is the reason I wanted to use Harry Potter as a discussion point, I think, was that J.K. clearly, I mean, I never, when I first read the books, I couldn't really appreciate, I couldn't get into the story. There was something about her writing style which just put me completely off. But if you look at the books and you look at them as a writer and you look at them with a critical eye, J.K. clearly has a great depth of knowledge.
Yes.
Just as a writer, and some of the aspects she brings in later. I mean, the concept, as you know, as you have in Narnia of there is older magic, the sort of self-sacrifice will trump everything.
Love, especially,
and that's
and that is something that's fairly heavily featured in both sagas or both series.
And in both, it was it's the old magic that the villains both forgot and didn't take into account when they are carrying out their various plans. Voldemort, when he kills Harry or tries to, forgets about the fact that Lily has just sacrificed herself, which means Harry's protected. He even says that he knew that magic existed, he just forgot about it.
Well, the really funny thing is he doesn't learn either, because in the end, in the final battle, it literally is, it's Harry's love for his friends and his family and his world that keeps them safe from Voldemort.
And Voldemort
he does not learn.
Yeah, he disregards it because Harry's still there, therefore, And even when Harry spells it out for him and he realises, setting fire to the sword on Neville's head didn't work. No one's been killed by him so far since Harry came back. Even then, he still is, by that point, so deranged and focused that it doesn't matter, and that's his downfall. Same with the White Witch, with Jadis.
Yes, she doesn't. She sort of has no. Well, I mean, in fairness, in C.S. Lewis, she doesn't have any knowledge of the power of the Stone Table until that scene when Aslan comes back. There is quite clearly. You sort of made an interesting comment though, Helen, with the idea of forgetting about old magic, and it almost drew my mind quickly to: is there an element of we should all remember the old ways in Harry Potter, or even in that kind of even in C.S. Lewis or in all of these kind of books? Is there an element of we must respect and we must understand and must know? Maybe that's me as a writer overanalyzing it. J.K. clearly has a knowledge of what went before her and has built upon that. Yeah. Is she then also saying, maybe this is me getting way too meta and going, she's also saying this, maybe?
You can certainly analyse it and look at it that way, and particularly if you take the old magic and that as being a allegory or comparison to history and tradition of respecting them and keeping them going. And particularly with history, of learning from your mistakes.
Yeah.
Which is something we could all generally do as a world in general. It's,
Yeah, I think that's the big thing with J.K. Rowling especially, is actually a running theme throughout her work with Harry Potter is learning from past mistakes, because there are comparisons been drawn between Harry's parents here and the students there, and how the current generation, as it were, have learnt from their previous counterparts' mistakes. Like how Neville Longbottom is a brilliant example, because he's compared to Peter Pettigrew, is what could have happened if Peter Pettigrew hadn't turned traitor.
Right.
He'd realised his potential, basically. And there's just little things like that, like if...
For those who sort of maybe don't know the books as well as you do,
yes.
Do you want to explain that a bit more? Sort of set the scene for those who may not know the books or know the lore as well as you.
In as much detail.
Yeah, sorry, I do forget. Basically, we know the main group of kids in the books are Harry Potter, who was obviously our titular and main character, Ron Weasley, Hermione Granger, and then if you want to get a little bit more expanded, you've got another 3 characters who come into their own later in the books. You've got Ron's little sister Ginny, Luna Lovegood, who's from one of the other houses.
Apologise, random scooter blazing past the window. Anyway,
and then we have Neville Longbottom, who's in the same year and same house as Ron, Hermione and Harry, and is sort of their friend and becomes more their friend as the books go on. But they drew parallels to Harry's parents and their friends, who are very similar in many ways to the current counterparts. So you've got, for example, the comparison I've normally seen is Harry is James without the ego. James is his dad, and he's shown in previous flashbacks for various characters to be a bit arrogant.
And at first, a little bit of a bully.
Yeah, and then you've got I think Sirius is meant to be Ron, but that's just through.
That's more process of elimination than anything.
And
else.
Also pureblood background, because obviously he's a full-blood wizard.
And also purebloods rejecting the stereotype of you have to all be in Slytherin, you have to all be kind of uptight about it and superior. Yeah,
and
then Hermione would be...
And then Hermione would be a mix between Lily and... No, not Lily, so because Ginny's Lily, which we'll get into the Freudianness of that later. But
Hermione would be Remus.
Hermione would be Remus, who is the clever, book-smartish one who was a bit of a loner as a child.
And is an outcast either for being a werewolf in Remus's case or a muggle-born in Hermione's.
So, I mean, what it seems that you've got here then is you've got JK almost knocking you then over the head with this idea that as long as you know what went before you, you can avoid it, and you can do better than your predecessors. What it sounds almost as if what you're detailing there, what it sounds to me immediately was, okay, you've got these people who are such and such without the ego, such and such without something, without a vital component that was their downfall beforehand.
Supporting family being Ron's.
Yeah, so this time you're going ahead with an entirely new generation who are going to fix... that seems a very optimistic worldview.
Yeah, and in fairness, I like that it's optimistic, because there's so much negativity and pessimism in fiction at the moment.
And also, the series can get fairly dark.
It can get right, especially when you get to the third one, where you have monsters that can pull out your worst fears and talk you insanity to it.
And they're essentially depression personified.
So, I mean, what is clear as well, or what I hope would be clear to listeners, viewers, is that the world is extraordinarily deep. There's an awful lot of lore to go into here. I mean, I made comparison earlier to Narnia and C.S. Lewis, who clearly wrote a very, very deep world there. Mm-hmm. I would argue perhaps though that the Harry Potter world is slightly... is even more so.
I would agree.
We've not just got, as you said earlier, you've got those the two sort of spin-off books that came quite early on, as I remember, in the publishing order.
Yeah, and they were all... I think they were maybe like the fourth or fifth book.
I think they were special because we had to wait a few years for the fourth book to come out.
Yeah, she took a bit of a break.
I didn't, because I'd read them literally before she brought them out. But I think people who've been reading them from 1997 had a bit of a weight on their hands between the third and the fourth book. I know we had a bit of a weight on our hands between 4 and 5 because I was there for that one.
Yeah. But the two side books, the Quidditch Through the Ages and Fantastic Beasts, they were for comic relief, so they were just little short thin books.
Yeah.
That were done. All the proceeds went to comic relief, but they were essentially entire world building guides because it was just an expansion on their world. It had very little to do with Harry and the group.
They added anecdotes and little history lessons. Basically, there's one between one particular crazy for the life of me. I cannot remember the name of it, but basically, how they're just a bunch of a clan of wizard family that was turned into
Quinterheads.
That turned into monsters by another one. It's kind of like what's the western in America? It's Boone and the two families which are feuding on a hill. You know the story.
I'm not great up on American history.
No, neither am I, sadly.
But, I mean, what was going to say there though was
McTavish or something. Like
we've got quite clearly though. It's like that old phrase, that old sort of adage where a writer is like a photographer taking a picture of a landscape. You see a tiny portion of the rest of the world. You only, the reader only sees what the camera sees. The reader only sees what the writer wants them to see. But nevertheless, there is this huge world, and that person could have chosen to take a snapshot of any moment or any part of that world.
Yeah.
And it's gone for this one in particular.
But you still feel the rest of the world behind that small snapshot.
Yeah.
And you mentioned about the side notes, in the sort of in-character side notes that are in those books. What maybe also gives away the huge world that's behind it. In similar, perhaps, with J.R.R. Tolkien and Middle Earth, is Pottermore and all the extra stuff that's going on there. Because one of the criticisms I made, and I think we discussed this a while ago at some point, was that I didn't particularly think there was a very coherent magic system or a very coherent way, like Dresden. It's very, very clear. If you're going to channel something, this is how it's done. You need something to channel things through. It's very clear.
It's very clear.
Butcher makes it very clear how that system works, how it operates. J.K. less so. And yet on Pottermore you have all these things coming up which are really interesting, showing you actually, it's almost like either it's one of two things, it feels like to me. She's retrospectively building the world and fixing problems. Or she's going, these are the things I didn't have time for.
I think a lot of it is, some of it will be fixing problems. She has admitted there are a few errors in the books. But I think for the most part it is things she didn't have time to fit in because she spoke, as she was writing the series, of things she wanted to put in but she couldn't. Just little things that she has always had in her head for the entire time she's writing the series. They just didn't find the space for in the books. I think there was one thing that when she was sitting in on one of the movie scripts actually, for the third one when they've got the choir scene at the start when they just got to Hogwarts and Phineas Flitwick is directing the choir. One of the directors or producers had an idea that the choir would be kind of inside this magical bubble thing and the camera would pull out and we'd see that and then it'd be inside the Great Hall and And Rowling said that it sounded beautifully, like a beautiful concept. It would have looked lovely on screen, but there was no reason for it. It didn't fit into her world. It broke the conventions of her magical system for that to exist. So she vetoed it, essentially said, beautiful idea, not going to work.
So, there you have a very clear indication, though, of that. That's a writer who clearly knows where the series is going, and it sort of seems the very opposite to somebody like George R.R. Martin, who is taking so very long with the books. You end up wondering whether or not he actually knows where his stories are going, and whether he has, or knowing that he's given license to HBO to go, you finish the stories as you need to finish them. Here are some of my ideas. Makes you wonder whether or not he's finally gone, I've painted myself into a corner. I don't know how to continue. And he's doing almost the reverse.
Yeah, I think he said that because fans have brought up for quite a while now that it's entirely possible he is going to die before he finishes this series.
There's a great Paul and Storm song, "Right Like the Wind," which is a hilarious thing. If you've not listened to the Paul and Storm thing, "Right Like the Wind," it's a music video. It really is worth going and having a look at. Sorry.
It's alright. Yeah, he's actually said that he has given HBO writers the actual ending he has planned out in case he does die. And
But
he
they
said
don't have to use it.
They don't have to use it, but he says that if that happens, he won't be getting anyone else to finish the series for him. Whatever the show gives us will be the ending we get.
Yeah.
So, which I imagine quite a few fans will be disappointed with, as the series has become very divisive.
Well, it's a nice flip on the, you get that, and for the life of me, I've never been able to understand it. You do get that rivalry between, I read the books, so I know what's right, and then you get people who've only watched the film, and you get people who've only read the books crying out and sort of almost naysaying those who've only watched the movies. I'm thinking like sort of Hunger Games. Obviously, you've got the thing with the big dogs in the movie, which were meant to be mutated versions of the Fallen Tributes, and you get that almost. I mean, Harry Potter. There are
so many examples.
Many examples that we could talk about on that.
On that topic though, with Harry Potter, I kind of agree. I am one of those people who says, you know what, you don't need to watch the movies. You can just read the books. The books are far better. And one very simple reason is this. They added in things that I personally, I am a massive, massive fan, and I adore the books. And I remember going to see the fourth film, being bitterly disappointed. But I could get over it, because there was stuff in there. They hadn't added things that hadn't happened. They'd just not been able to add all the things I wanted, which is fine. And then I got to the fifth and sixth film especially really got under my skin. And I'm not saying that, no, that bit was wrong, but for me personally, it's like, why have you done that? Why have you not done what happened in the book? What happened in the book was better than what you came up with. I think it was a bit, unfortunately, of course, I can't say J.K. Rowling's been vetoed, because she's one of the seems to have had most power over her film series.
Well, you say that though. I mean, the early days, I suspect there was less power. And let's not forget, this was, for lack of a better word, somebody who'd not done this before, coming into a world where all of a sudden she had professionals who'd been writing scripts for years.
Yeah.
And had done some quite successful scripts, knowing their trade very well.
Yeah.
So you do have that dichotomy. I mean, as sort of time is getting on, we are sort of getting to the point where we'll have to decide whether we're continuing and go into a really long episode or whether we cut short soon. But it makes me wonder. Obviously, we've got sort of the follow-ups, the next chapter of the story.
Yeah.
We as the world at large, there have been snippets, there have been short stories, there have been little bits that have been leaked out through, like Pottermore.
Pottermore is a wonderful resource for it.
Do you have any hopes or any interests in what's going to happen next with the stage play, or the two-part stage play?
Well, I personally am looking forward to it. I've got tickets already, and I'm very lucky to go on my birthday. So that's going to be a fun weekend. I'm looking forward to it because J.K. Rowling's been the one who actually has wrote the script. Obviously, I'm assuming with help and advice from professional screenwriters. Bless you.
Bless you.
You're going to have to cut that.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Go on, carry on.
I'm looking forward to it. I do want to see what she's going to do with the characters, with the worlds, so many years in the future. There is a bit of apprehension because you don't know what this is going to be. Because we've got the Fantastic Worlds coming out as well. You don't know how much of this is essentially going to be Warner Brothers milking the franchise. Less so with the stage play because they don't have as much influence, or if any influence. But with the movies, it's how much of this is unnecessary, and we're only going to be able to truly assess that when they've actually come out and we've been able to see them.
Well, I must admit, as cynic that I am, when I saw that they were splitting it into two, my first reaction was so aggressively against that. I mean, I watch far more theatre than I do film.
Yeah.
I mean, that's because that's what I'm into. I prefer theatre, and for me, it felt like somebody trespassing into a world they should not trespass into. They should not be taking something that's done in movies and doing a two-part play. It felt completely wrong, and I, cynic that I am, thought, oh, it's a cash grab. And of course, you got this situation I didn't realise at the time that one ticket gets you into both plays, which kind of negates that somewhat.
Yeah. Also, if you're going to go along the lines of, they shouldn't be crossing their threshold and books shouldn't be going to movies, Martin.
I know.
You see me points.
But there's that vested interest we all have in certain areas that just makes it just clench and go, why are they doing that?
Yeah, I have that actually quite a lot whenever certain books are talked about being turned into franchises.
Percy Jackson.
I'm not even thinking Percy Jackson. I'm thinking the much lamented Do Not Talk About Dresden Files TV show.
See, that was my first exposure to Dresden, but we will get to
Yeah.
we will get to that in another episode or at another time. I think though maybe it's worth moving on. Sort of, you guys are obviously much like for me. Pratchett was a big influence as you know, reading him, and actually there's a lot that I aspire to emulate.
Yes.
In those series, has Harry Potter changed you, and do you suspect it's changed other writers or developed you as writers going forward and through sort of motivating factors even to be, you know, to going and doing degrees even?
Well, I just wrote an entire essay on how Harry Potter affected my life as a writer.
And of course you're doing a master's now, aren't
I am, yes, which was my first submission for it, which is, we'll see how that goes. Yeah, it's just, that was, along with Lord of the Rings, that was my first exposure to like a real in-depth world. That was my first experience of sitting down with a book, prolific reader as I was anyway, and getting literally lost in it. People would have to put their hands between my face and the page before I'd realise someone was trying to talk to me. It was that. So that did have a big influence on my reading, on my writing, and yeah, it gave me kind of a set the bar initially for my own world building later, because I can see through Pottermore things like that, just what the level of depth you're going to need, even just as a starting point, and where to build from that. So
I found it advanced my way of passing time through writing. That was one of the tricks I learned from it. But it's just the themes of it and the ideas of family and fathers and sons and mothers and sons and so on and so forth. That's influenced my writing immensely, because I nearly write everything I write is about fathers and sons. And some of that comes from my own personal life, but a lot of it I think comes from the importance of family put into fiction by J.K. Rowling and certain other readers authors that I read. I think mostly it's my base. It's where I go from. It's the kind of idea that there are secret societies, or secret worlds.
Almost the comfort zone.
The comfort zone,
yeah,
really. If I am in need, if I have been writing something original for a while and I'm getting a bit nervous, I will go into what I've spent the last 6 years of my life doing and sit down and write my own take, an alternate universe of the Harry Potter world, where it's, as opposed to Harry being raised by the Dursleys, he's raised by his dad and his friends.
I mean, as we're getting close to time, I think.
Yes.
We are going to have to call in a bit, but I suppose the interesting thing for me is looking at Harry Potter and seeing, in common with a lot of TV shows and a lot of other big, grand worlds that have been created, is the fandom behind, behind it, and it's, I think, a testament to worlds when. And to a writer who has created a world, when there is so much that other writers can then work off and create fan fiction from. And I know both of you write fan fiction, and I wish we had a bit more time to talk about that, but we are getting on now.
We can do another episode for that. It's fine.
I think we mentioned it's already on the slate.
Yeah.
Because I suspect we could all talk about that for quite a while.
Yes.
And especially sort of whether or not that helps us as writers and
pros
what
and
have you.
cons.
But what
Excuse me.
we're talking about many years down the line now, after the Harry Potter series. Where do you think, or what do you think is the big conflict from from this play? What would you hope would be the big conflict? What would you like to see? The one thing, one sentence I'm going to give you each. Here's a challenge.
Oh, ladies first.
Clubhouse. Oh, well, what little we know is that it's something to do with a child, and we can see from the epilogue that it's possibly going to be something between Harry and his second son, Albus, but that would be the obvious answer. So maybe a conflict to do with a different child.
Voldemort's son.
That would be something.
That would be a twist.
Maybe more grandson than anything.
How many fans' heads would explode if that was the case?
I think J.K. Rowling might need to get security.
I think J.K. Rowling not coming down for definite on certain issues that have been raised by the casting, which is perfectly fine, because obviously theatre's colourblind, but we won't get into that.
No. I mean, that's actually a subject I wanted to avoid simply because it's absolute nonsense. It's, you know, I don't see that there's any validity in...
Yeah, but if she was going to wind up making it Voldemort's descendant of any description, that would just scream bad fan fiction. I've seen it done all over the place, trust me, it would just be like... The fandom as a whole, except for people who like writing about the idea of Lord Voldemort having children and grandchildren, which I can't think of many, their heads would explode and we would rebel.
Yeah.
Well, I think we better end it there, because otherwise we'll end up talking for another half an hour or another 50 minutes.
Do that.
There may be a part 2. There may be another part at some point in the future. But for now, thanks very much for listening. If you have been listening or watching, if you can subscribe, like, any ratings or reviews, that kind of stuff would be really helpful to us. But for now, I've been Martin.
I'm Helen.
And I've been Dave. Meh.